treated like a commodity, sometimes we may present ourselves as a commodity, right? Like I take on
Mhm.
the behavior of a person who's just a commodity, you know, where
Yeah. Yeah.
I start people pleasing so you'll like me. I do things so that you will, you know, instead of showing up as who I really am when I need to, you know? And there are people who get into relationships and they're just there so that they won't be alone, so that
Mhm.
you know that
Mhm.
they'll have
Mhm.
someone or have something on their arm, you know. It's
Right.
it's about
Right.
ego, and
Mhm.
situations like that are going to have humongous problems, you know. And once the person figures it out, you know, it will be hard to respect or love that person. But
Mhm.
to the
Mhm.
marriage, to the person that will watch this today or later, and
Mhm.
you're married, you know, and you're really struggling in your marriage,
Mhm.
you feel like you're alone, or you
Mhm.
feel like your wife is, you know, you either you as a wife, you like you just feel like I'm in this by myself. We're just partners. We share the house, but we're not together. I
Mhm.
invite you to really dive deeper into how am I loving this person? How am I respecting this person?
Mhm.
Miles Monroe, he said, what's her name? You know, that song, A Little Respect When I Come Home. Yeah, baby.
Yeah.
What's her name? Aretha Franklin.
Yes. Yes.
Miles, and I don't know how you all feel about this, but Miles Monroe said Aretha Franklin had it wrong. She was saying, I just need a little respect. Really, 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 you know?
Yeah.
But the idea is that no, you need love, you know, you need affection, you need
Mhm.
compassion, you
Mhm.
need prioritizing, you know, the man, he needs esteem. He needs to know that he matters. And
Mhm.
every person is different. What will it mean for my husband to show me compassion will be different for what it means for another person, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I invite that married couple that is watching this today, or people who are thinking about getting married, to really look at it like, is it possible that we're missing this in this core need
Mhm.
of our person? Is
Mhm.
that person missing our core need? And if you're not married but you are in relationships with the opposite sex, and you want them to improve, consider
Mhm.
that this might be at the root. Love and respect, you know,
Mhm.
might be at the
Mhm.
root of the issues that you're facing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. If you're just now joining us on the This Way Network, I want to apologize first. We've had some technical difficulties, and I realize that for a lot of you, you're just now coming into the conversation because you weren't seeing us before then.
Oh no, wow, okay.
Yes, yes. So Rodney had some technical difficulties. He popped in and out, and and I'm not really sure what all happened here. We're not, I'm not great on the technical end of things here. But obviously, we're talking to Mia Pyle today, and we're talking about love and respect between men and women in relationships and how they're different from each other, how there is some overlap, there's some similarities. And part of what we've already said, in case you missed it, you're just now hearing this, um, we've been talking about, for one thing, that both men and women need love and respect.
Yes.
And so to say that men need respect and women need love doesn't mean that each doesn't need the other as well.
Right.
But we've been talking about what the difference means. And one of the things that we brought into the equation was the difference in the roles that men and women have in a relationship. And I was pondering about whether or not the fact that the man is, we perceive the man as being the leader. And as the analogy that Mia gave is like, if you have a football team, there's only one coach on the team. And even though he's going to make some mistakes, that just comes with the nature of the situation you have. And everybody understands that. And they realize, well, but we still do what the coach says. We're still going to execute the plays. We're going to give our input, certainly, but only one person can make the decision about what's supposed to happen. And then if one of the players decides, oh, well, I don't like that play, I'm going to call a different one. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, but that's not the strategy you want to use going forward, that the players see what the coach says as mere suggestions. So, and we were talking about the difference that this makes for how men perceives the esteem that we give them, this fact that they have this role, and whether or not they perceive that they're being regarded because of that role they have.
Yeah,
Did I sum that up pretty well, I think?
man, you definitely hit the highlights for sure. Absolutely. I know another thing we talked about is priority. That's what it comes down to when we think about love and respect for men and women. The
Mhm.
idea is, how are we prioritizing that person in our relationship, as
Mhm.
it seems to be very important for men to be esteemed and admired, not as a, oh, let me stroke his ego so he feels good about himself. No,
Right.
but like a core need of, to be honored, to be, that there's a difference between me and the other people in your life that are men or women,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
I have a special place that is prioritized in how you treat me, and for the woman, that priority in the realm of love looks
Mhm.
different. How do you prioritize me, in
Mhm.
the way that I understand, in the way that I'm wired to
Right.
in
Right.
the way that I'm wired as a person and as a woman, how am I being prioritized? um
Right.
and I
Right.
think another thing that they may have missed was just the idea that respect may be different than what we've thought of, like
Mhm.
respect. I thought as a southerner, it's yes ma'am, no ma'am, look them in the eye. But the
Mhm.
idea of respect as, I esteem this person, I admire
Right.
them even in the face of their mistakes, just like I
Mhm.
want to be loved unconditionally in the face of my mistakes. I can respect this person even in the face of their mistakes. And of course, this is super loaded, right? Because some people are like,
Yeah.
well, what if it's an affair? What if he's, harming the children? What if there's a lot of
Mhm.
what ifs? Or what if this woman
Mhm.
has, I don't know. There's so many things, like gone out and had an affair also, or is hurting the children, or what, there's deeper issues
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
come up with this topic. And so just inviting people to take a deeper dive and deeper look in what it means to have love and respect.
Mhm. Mhm. And now let's flip to the other side
Mm.
for a moment and say that we're doing our best to provide love and respect. But what if it seems like it's not being perceived?
That makes me think of something you were telling me earlier, Nina. You were saying there was a person that you knew
Mhm.
who felt like you didn't respect them. Am I okay to say that part? Like,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
okay,
Well,
okay.
do you mind if I just say it?
Yeah, please
Yeah.
tell
So,
them about
yeah,
that. Yeah.
me and I were actually talking last night, and this is something I brought up to her, that I was actually told once by a man, that men in general perceive disagreement as disrespect. And so, and that really lent a lot of understanding to my relationship with that particular man, because I came to realize that when he asked my opinion, he didn't really want to know what I really thought. He just wanted just my agreement. And so if I didn't agree with something, I was hard pressed to know how in the world I was supposed to express that and still have him feel respected.
Right. So that's so intense because, um when we think about that, it makes me think about, just how loaded this is. Somebody says this goes way deep, right? And I always say her name wrong, so because I know she spells it differently, but she said this goes way deep in the comments. And I was just thinking, the person who's saying, unless you agree with me, you're disrespecting me. We can know that that's unhealthy, right? Because how can how can a person grow or learn if everyone around them agrees with everything they say all the time, you
Mhm.
know? Like,
Mhm.
as human beings, we make mistakes, and we need people around us that are going to be able to say, hey, I don't like how you did that, or, that didn't land well with me. So if we
Yeah.
have a husband or a man out there, or even a woman out there that says you're disrespecting me because you're not agreeing with everything I say, then we
Mhm.
know that that's very unhealthy. And principally, um that wouldn't make for a good relationship, and it wouldn't make for a growing person, right?
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
and that's something we have to look at too in our relationships. For those of you who are in relationships and you want them to grow and get better, considering that respect for a man may look like this: that when he's talking, I don't just jump in and interrupt with
Mhm.
my thoughts and opinions, but I actually hear him out. That I don't just shoot down his opinion and say, "Oh, that's stupid," like everybody knows that already, but rather I find a way to ask more questions if I don't understand or I don't agree, or I find ways to respectfully disagree, and I find out when's the best times to disagree, right? Because
Mhm.
some men may feel like, "Okay, if you don't agree with me, that's fine, but did you have to do it in front of the whole church or in front of my parents or in front of our kids?" you know? And that
Mhm.
makes me feel small, because a lot
Mhm.
of people are dealing with insecurities, right? And feeling
Mhm.
worthless and like they're nothing. Okay. Same thing can go for women, right? Um,
Mhm.
when we're thinking about, as a woman, do you even hear me when I speak to you? Or are you so involved in the television or YouTube or in your
Mhm.
golf that you don't hear what I said, and I have to repeat myself over and over? And you told me that you would help with this situation that's going on in the home, and you haven't done it. Have you showed me that I'm a priority versus looking at every woman that walks by? How will I
Mhm.
know that
Mhm.
you love me, by
Right.
your actions? And do you only love me when I look good, or do you love me even when I'm sick? That unconditional piece coming back in there,
Mhm. Mhm. So, I just put a comment up that EU had made about, I believe it's the right relate. I believe when is the right relationship? It's effortless. Otherwise, it's a business. Um, so I think that's a very interesting comment, and I'd like you to address that a little bit because I think in relationships with men and women, I think a lot of times we do have this idea that, oh, if they're the right person and, you know, they really understand me, et cetera, then it is going to be effortless. We're just always going to get along and there's not going to be problems. And even if there is a little problem, like it's going to be a small misunderstanding and we're just never going to have any major issues.
and so I would question that. If I believe that, things are going to be effortless, what in life has been effortless um that was worth it, if that makes sense. Think about your hairstyles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know who has a good hairstyle without effort, right?
Right.
That you just wake
Right.
up and, maybe someone, but I haven't met
Yeah. Yeah.
anyone that when I wake up in the morning, there's not an effort to look better, whether I have to wash my face or I have to comb my hair or wash something, right? And
Mhm.
so there's not really anything in life that's worth it that there's not an effort that has to be made. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes we believe that, in our relationships, there's no work to be done. And if there's work to be done, that means it's not a good relationship, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
we can even feel that way. Somebody said our society has ruined our brains. And, I think that's powerful. I could see why someone might say that, because there is this idea that everything's just supposed to go right all the time in our society, or that we won't have problems. And if we have problems, then things are messed up, but
Mhm.
even with our mental health, there takes effort. Some people
Mhm.
go to therapy, and I
Mhm.
highly recommend therapy, coaching, something, right?
Mhm.
For
Mhm.
relationships, because again, if I grew up in a home where love and respect was distorted,
Mhm.
my father, if my father was a person who thought, don't disagree with me, or my mother was a person who was always circumventing everything my father said, then therapy
Mhm,
is going to help
mhm,
me unpack that.
mhm,
But even in therapy, there's work and effort to be done in order for you to get better. There is a part that we play, and if we don't
mhm,
do the work, we will not have new results, you
mhm.
know? And
True.
we say, oh, that therapist wasn't a good therapist or that coach wasn't a good coach. Possibly, but did we do the work, and even in our
Mhm,
relationships, can I learn what it means to respect this person?
mhm.
Especially if I'm married, learning how to respect the person, because the idea is that marriage is forever, right? And so
Yeah.
how can I learn to improve this relationship, um, in respecting this person or in loving this person? And if I'm not married, figuring out before I make a final step like that, can I
Mhm.
respect the way this person is respected? Can I love this
Yeah,
person the way that
yeah.
they are saying they need to be loved, what I'm observing? Does that make sense?
Right. Oh, yeah, yeah. I think it does. Anyway, you put me in mind of a couple I knew that, they had gotten married, they really cared about each other, it seemed to be a great relationship, and then they bought a home, and they're going to paint the walls in their home, and they had some furniture already, so they wanted to, paint the walls, colors that went with the furniture and so forth, and the wife picked out a color she really liked, and she showed it to the husband, and he picked out a color he really liked, and the wife saw it, and she's like, no, that's kind of really off. It doesn't look quite right with the furniture." And he was like, "No, it looks fine." And she was like, "No, it's just it's in the right color family, but it's just not quite there." And they could not agree on it. And they got to the place where they were really resenting each other because the wife was so certain that they were going to paint those walls the color he wanted. And then they would have to live with it for a long time. And she was really going to hate it. So she was trying to stave off that unpleasant situation and the resentment she was going to feel if she had to paint it the color that he wanted to. And he did not understand why she wouldn't. He said, "They're in the same color family. I don't get it." They really were at loggerheads over this, and even to the point they thought they might end up having to part company, to part ways. And then there came a point where, because they were both invested in the relationship and they were committed to good communication, they kept talking, but they didn't keep saying the same things over and over again. And instead, they started asking questions. And each came to understand that there was a different issue going on here. It turns out the husband was actually somewhat colorblind. And so to him, the two colors that they were talking about looked almost the same. He couldn't see that there was any difference, but of course the wife knew there was a great difference in them.
Mhm.
And because the husband didn't know before that he was colorblind, he thought everybody could see what he could see. And it was obvious. And the same thing with the wife. She thought everybody saw the way she saw. So it wasn't until they each understood that both of them perceive things differently and that that was not ever going to change,
Mhm.
that they found a way to work through this. In the end, I don't remember exactly what they did, but I think they ended up picking yet a third color that they both could agree on, and later they changed some of the furniture anyway.
Wow,
So that's
wow,
because they were committed to each other to make
wow.
it work.
And
So
and
what you
mhm.
I was
I
just
love
gonna
this.
say.
Oh, sorry. No, you go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I love that, Nina, because that's the thing. I love how, and I hope that that's clear. In love and respect, we're not telling people to become somebody that they're not.
Right.
Uh, don't let go of yourself for the sake of the relationship. Don't let go
Right,
of yourself so that I can show that I love you or I respect you. Like,
right,
who you are, who you've intrinsically been made to be is so invaluable. You don't want to lose yourself in someone else, because what you bring to the table is valuable. And you said it just like EU said it in the comments, that communication, mastering communication is
Mhm.
key. But I also love in your analogy, and your story is a real story, actually, that, you know, understanding that there may be more at stake in the relationship than just communication. There may be some need for assessment,
Right,
right? Like that
right.
that idea that he was colorblind. And what if in your relationship there are other areas in your heart, in your psychology,
Mhm.
that need addressing in order for you to even be able to make the steps to receive love and to know that you're being loved?
True.
Because maybe even how you understand love or understand respect could be distorted, just like his sight was distorted, you know?
True,
And
true, and, he did
mhm,
get to the place where, because they eventually, instead of just arguing with each other about which color, they started asking, laying it down in front of the other people and asking their friends, and all the friends agreed with her. And at first he was thinking, well, that's just because they're her
her
friends, and
friends, right?
but then he started asking his friends, and they started saying the same thing, and that's when he started wondering, well, why is it I'm seeing this so different? And so then they started investigating that a little further. But eventually he got to the place where he was like, I'm so glad we found a way through where we both still
Yes.
had regard for each other, still respected each other. He said, but now I recognize that I'm not gonna see it the same way the rest of the world does, and so whenever it's time to pick out a color, I defer to my wife.
And I want to say this because I know we're out of time just now, but like, someone in the comments, I always say her name wrong. You're gonna have to say it for me, Nina. But she said, she talked about doing the work, right? But feeling like she
Mhm.
doesn't get what she puts in. Like I put in a lot, but I don't get it back, you know?
By the
And
way, that is, if you look at her name, it is Jumper Carries backwards. So
jumper,
read it from the end, start with a J
jumper.
at the end and read it backwards. It's Jumper Carrie, so her name is actually Carrie.
Okay, you told me every show. I feel like you tell me because I see you on there, Carrie. But I always forget how to say it. I'm like, I'm gonna say another thing. But I just want to say to her, thank you first of all for saying that, because a lot of people feel that way. Like,
Mhm.
man, I really do want to get better. I am doing what my therapist or my coach or whoever said, and I just don't feel like I'm getting back what I put in. And that, I want you to know that that is a normal feeling, and you're not alone in feeling that way. And I also want to say, don't give up. Don't give up. For those of you who feel just like Carrie, because I know I definitely can feel that way as well, Carrie, in all transparency. Like, I feel like sometimes it's not even worth it. After doing so much work on myself, like, is it even worth it? Like, I'm ready to give up, honestly.
Mhm.
But let's not give up. You know what I mean? Because who we're becoming is invaluable. Who we are already is invaluable. And there is no other Carrie, there's no other Nina, there's no other Mia, whoever's watching this, and there's no other you. And you're so special and powerful. And we're going to keep working on ourselves. We're going to keep, and maybe looking into, okay, maybe the work that I'm doing isn't working for me. There may be other things, modalities, or ways that options that I might need to look into that may work better. Surprisingly, a lot of people have benefited, not necessarily even from therapy, but from what nature has to provide for their mental health, right? Like having a garden, or going on walks. There are some people who don't benefit from therapy. They benefit from a good non-judgmental friend, and they get a lot from that, and so, and those are just two examples. But do look into this, especially for those of you who, because I know some people you're watching, you're not in a relationship,
Mhm.
and you're like, okay, this does not have anything to do with me. But
Mhm.
it does, because you're in a relationship with someone, even if it's not like an intimate relationship. And we're going to encounter men all the time. We're going to encounter women all the time.
Mhm.
And these principles that are coming from the Bible are eternal, and
Yeah.
you'll find that practicing them in your relationships, whether it's a kid or a grown up, an elderly person, it's gonna have huge payoffs if we better understand it and better understand ourselves.
Mhm.
Uh-oh, sorry.
I definitely want to, keep this conversation going the next time you come, Mia. I feel like we've only scratched the surface, and there's so much more that we could explore, about this. And I'm thinking in particular, not just between men and women. We've been talking like it's always husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend, but there's also other kinds of relationships, daughters with their fathers and sons with their mothers, sons who have grown up to be men.
That's
And now,
right.
there's a relationship there. And the moms realizing that their sons as men need that respect.
Whew, and this is where we needed Rodney. I can't wait for him
Yeah,
to come back
yes,
because I
I
would love
know.
to
I'm
hear what he
looking
has to say
forward to
about
that
it.
too. Hopefully
Yeah.
next time, y'all, Rodney's technical issues will be resolved and he'll be able to join us for the full discussion. So much more to say, and I'm so glad you came on with us today, Mia. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
We'll be looking forward to having you on again, I hope, very soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Look forward to being with everybody.
And until then, thank you for joining us, everyone. And we apologize again for the technical difficulties, but we hope you'll come back and join us again next week on the This Way Network for the chat session. And be of good courage, everyone. God is with us, and we are not alone. Bye, everyone.